Why are our black neighborhoods disappearing? Why? Where are our black neighborhoods? Once filled with black owned businesses, culture, and history, these neighborhoods are vanishing. Families forced out, rents skyrocketing, and entire communities erased in the name of progress. But is it development or displacement, to be honest? We are the black communities. We are those. Please take us back to that time. Where are those communities right now? Let's see what people are saying, and then I'll be back with the commentaries. Please kindly subscribe, like, share, because it's about to really, really get deep in this topic. Do not afford to miss any part of it. Make sure to watch till the very end of this video.
So it wasn't just Tulsa. Tulsa is just one of many cities, and I'm going to give you a list in this video, that was destroyed, whether it be bombed, set on fire, flooded out, because white people were afraid of black progression. Rosewood, Florida is one. Rosewood was demolished because a white woman claimed to have been raped by a black man, which is a common occurrence that you'll notice throughout black history, but most times it's false. Five Points District in Lower Manhattan. Speaking of New York, Seneca Village, Oscarville, small neighborhoods in southeast and southwest Atlanta. Portsmouth, Ohio in 1831, they expelled all of their black citizens. Salina, Tennessee. Comanche County, Texas. Lexington and Blackwell, Oklahoma. While I'm on the topic of Oklahoma had some 50 black towns. Black Wall Street was not just Tulsa, it was all over Oklahoma. Quick little reminder for anybody new here, I teach Black history. Go ahead and give me a follow. Also, I have a nonprofit dedicated to keeping Black history in our schools because it is under attack. They're trying to get it out of our schools and change the course of what we know to be Black history today for future generations. My nonprofit is going to be employing students from the local HBCU here in Atlanta. It's based in Atlanta, but I plan on doing this everywhere. But we're going to be employing local HBCU students to teach an after-school program called the Black History Project. If you want to help me, what I need is donations. I can do everything from there. What I'm doing right now is out of my pockets, and the little bit of donations that I do get, I really do appreciate, but I could use more. In the meantime, yeah, give me a follow. I teach Black history. Subscribe to my YouTube and all that good stuff. Just tap the link in my bio. All of it is in the link in my bio. But let's get back into it. Monet, Missouri, and Linton, Louisiana. This was a series, I call it an era, of just violence against black people between 1894 and 1896. We all know Oscarville, which is now known as Lake Lanier, but Forsyth County in general had a lot of black thriving communities that was unfortunately ruined by racist white people. Ocoee, Florida, Corbin, Kentucky, Blandford, Indiana was another one, and that was actually a KKK-led expulsion of all black people. In 1954, Vienna, Illinois, that was when all the white residents burned all the black residents' homes and businesses. Mind you, I'm saying 1954. Now, of course, I'm not mentioning all of them. I'm mentioning a lot of them that I want you to look into because we only really hear about Tulsa. And there was so many different other Tulsas, even around Tulsa. I told you there was 50 black cities, black communities, thriving communities around Tulsa that we don't even know about. And then so many all over the country, right, over the course of time. And the massacres and the expulsions that I just mentioned, it ranged from the early 1800s into, like I said, the 1960s, 1950s. So yeah, I just want everybody to know that it wasn't like we got our freedom and we didn't do anything about it. We got our freedom and we used the hell out of it. We created our own establishment. We had our own cities. We had our own communities. We were doing perfectly fine without others. And as soon as others came in, it wasn't in a sense of trying to help. It was, we got to ruin this because you guys are doing way too good. And this was not our intentions.
So the Puit Ego neighborhood, it's something I talked about in my last video, but I wanted to say more about it because it's a place most people in St. Louis don't talk about or don't even know existed. However, it's one of the clearest examples of how a city can build up a community and then slowly, systemically tear it down. This isn't just about failed buildings, it's about erasing black lives from the map. So before the large, tall buildings that the Puit Ego neighborhood is famous for were built, the land was part of the DeSoto Car neighborhood, and it was a mixed black and white working class community. Families lived in tight quarters, yes, but it was home. You had barbershops, grocers, churches, jazz clubs, families grilling on the porch. It was crowded, but it was intact. Then came the label blight, and with it, the destruction. So in 1949, under the Housing Act, St. Louis officials started clearing slums, which basically meant bulldozing black homes. What came next was Puit Ego, a 33 high-rise public housing towers built between 1954 and 1956. It was named after Wendell O. Pruitt, a decorated black Tuskegee airman, and William Ego, a white congressman. It was designed by Minoru Yamasaki. Yes, the same guy who designed the World Trade Center. It was supposed to be cutting-edge public housing, but it was built with failure baked in. Elevators only stopped every third floor. Narrow, dark hallways hid violence. Trash chutes backed up with rot. Apartments had no central air in the summer and weak heat in the winter. Leaky pipes, peeling lead paint, broken windows, and when things broke, the city didn't fix them. Not once. Not reliably. This was intentional neglect. So originally, the Puit Ego buildings were meant for black and white families, but as more black families moved in, white families moved out. And this was happening all over the North City area. This was white flight, and it drained money from the city overnight. Then came redlining, banks refusing loans to black residents on the north side and refusing money to businesses. It meant no new investment, no opportunity, and no wealth building. So St. Louis basically made North City unlivable, but blamed the people who stayed. The Puit Ego neighborhood was soon overrun with crime. However, crime didn't just show up. It basically grew where resources were denied, where broken lights left hallways dark, where elevators failed and stairwells became unsafe. The city didn't protect this community, they abandoned it. And then, while all of that was happening, St. Louis was also being used as a secret Cold War testing ground. In the 1950s, the government sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide over the Puit Ego area. They didn't tell residents, there was no consent. People like Doris Spates watched family members die of cancer without answers, and then decades later, the truth leaked out. They treated a black neighborhood like a lab. By 1972, Puit Ego was called a total failure. The first building was demolished live on television. By 1976, all 33 towers were gone. But that land, still mostly empty to this day. The streets of DeSoto Car were never rebuilt. 57 acres just wiped out.
Let's talk about it real quick. I just seen somebody post and it said over 500 black neighborhoods have disappeared over the past 20 years. And now those neighborhoods, like in Watts, it's like 80% Hispanic now, where it used to be 80% black. Just 15, 20 years ago. And these neighborhoods are now mostly white, Hispanic, or Asian. We're not going to blame all this on gentrification. No. And yes, with gentrification, y'all sold them houses. Y'all sold y'all grandma them houses. See, it wasn't people born in the 90s, because that wasn't our problem yet. We wasn't grown enough. It was the people born in the 60s and 70s. They sold their grandma, great-grandma, grandpa land. They sold that house. They didn't want it until the last minute. It was like, oh, the city trying to take it. But you ain't never did nothing with it. You didn't want to stay in the hood. You wanted to take your ass to the suburbs, and you wanted to be around white people. So now we don't have all these big, strong communities, all these black communities, because a lot of black American people sold and ran to the suburbs. Not even ran to the black suburbs. Didn't want to be around black people. Black people now don't want to be around black people. That's why the community is not as strong. Me, I bought me a house in the hood. I'm going to buy multiple houses in the hood. That's the only way to have strong community. Y'all don't care. Y'all care when it's we arguing with the Africans, we arguing with everybody, but damn. And we argue with each other all day. Can y'all at least buy black? Buy black around each other. Have a black doctor. Be in a black neighborhood. Take your kids to a black school. Been bamboozled, hoodwinked, tricked into thinking being around others was better. Now look at it. Then black people didn't even want to be with each other. Black men want mixed kids more than anybody. Assimilating to somebody else's culture. Then 2-3 generations down, this is now that neighborhood. This is now those people. Are we going to do better moving forward, or we just going to complain and then the neighborhood's just going to go away?
Black people, we need to talk real quick. So I am noticing, and I've taken notice of this for years, that we are losing valuable land and property in our communities because we're not taking care of our elders. What I mean is, I've seen 4 instances, specifically in Austin, where there were elders that I, connected with somehow, probably just walk in or coming through the neighborhood. And these people eventually passed away, and all of their properties were sold either through auction or public land sale. So when you start thinking about like how the demographic of our communities shift, it's not that that people are just selling the land off. These people, we're not protecting our elders. There is nothing in place where their properties and their land is being protected, even if they pass away. You know what I'm saying? And what made me pay attention to this was in LeClaire Courts, where I grew up, there was a black neighborhood. a black neighborhood, okay? And what I noticed was, as I got older and the elders that owned all of those homes started to pass away, their kids or grandkids or somebody eventually got it, and then they lost those homes or sold those homes for little to nothing. And now the entire demographic of LeClaire Courts has shifted. When that was absolutely a black community. The stores were black, the restaurants were black. And I just told my partner yesterday, I was like, that's what made me pay such close attention to what was happening in Austin, because where I grew up in LeClaire Courts, everything was black. And I saw how it shifted because so many of the people who lived there, when the elders passed on, they probably left the property to somebody who wasn't in the right state of mind to protect their parents or grandparents' property. So I've seen 4 instances in Austin specifically where elders passed away and their property was literally sold via public sale or auction. Like, and I'm telling you this because I looked it up. How was that land sold? We have to do better. That means you all need to be sitting with your grandparents, great grandparents, somebody, and figuring out what needs to be done to protect the things that they worked so hard to get, and then it's squandered away because somebody didn't pay the damn property taxes, or you all didn't take the time to sit down and draw up a living will and things like that. I'm not perfect, but those things, specifically a gentleman that passed away here in Austin, was one of the main reasons that I sat down with my great grandmother and I asked her for all of her wishes. I know exactly what my great grandmother wants done with everything that she owns if she passes away. I know that might not be like what y'all want to hear, and trust me, talking to my great grandmother about what happens if she passes away was one of the hardest conversations I've had in my life. I cried in the car, but I just refused to let it happen because I took her to the store one day, and one of the things that my grandmother randomly said while I was taking her to the store was, "Don't let them lose my house." No explanation needed. Like, that was like her nudging me to say, make sure that stuff is taken care of. I didn't even know what to do, but I did know that a big reason for why people lost a lot of their people's property was because they just didn't take care of business, like paperwork wise. So you have to ask them. And I know that's a scary thing, black people. I know it's scary to have to sit with your people and ask them what they want done. But like, even now, like that, my mother calls me and she planned, like we were just talking about this earlier this week. This is what, you know what I'm saying, your dad and I are putting in place if something was to happen to us. You have to have the conversation. Is it scary? Is it hard? Hell yeah. I don't want to think about neither one of my parents leaving me, but the reality is at some point in a long time from now, they won't be here, and I know that they've worked their butts off to make sure that we had certain things and that they left things in order for me and my siblings. So I need y'all, please take care of y'all elders, bro. Like, go have a conversation with them and ask them what they want. Look at that paperwork. Look at who's on those deeds. Just protect y'all people, bro. That's all I'm trying to say. Protect your people.
So I'm thinking a lot of people don't know this, but St. Louis once had its own Harlem, Chestnut Valley. It was a black cultural powerhouse and a major vice district that gave the city cover to wipe it out. From the late 1800s to the 1930s, Chestnut and Market Streets buzzed with black-owned cafes, theaters, boarding houses, and clubs. Scott Joplin lived and performed here. Tom Turpin's Rosebud Cafe launched ragtime royalty. Booker T. Washington Theater drew black elites from across the region. This wasn't just nightlife. It was a black-owned economic ecosystem. Entrepreneurs built wealth through music, entertainment, barbershops, hotels, and even real estate. Chestnut Valley was a self-made enclave until its reputation shifted. At the time, Chestnut Valley was prosperous, but its prosperity also bred vice. By 1900, it was home to over 50 brothels and dozens of gambling dens, which were illegal but tolerated. River workers, shipping crews, and train travelers fueled round-the-clock trade in illicit booze, cards, and women. The district even had an unofficial paddy wagon corridor to shuttle rowdy patrons to jail. White press sensationalism branded the block the wicked heart of the city, and local officials picked up on the cue. The vice label stuck and was later used to justify urban renewal. They said, "It's not culture, it's criminal corruption." By the late 1920s, police began shutting businesses. After Prohibition, Chestnut Valley's clubs became targets for raids and zoning. In 1931, the municipal land clearance law empowered the city, and officials like Mayor Joseph Darst collaborated with architects and planners like Harlem Bartholomew to redraw the district completely out of existence. In the 1950s, Chestnut Valley was gone, leveled for highways, parking lots, and civic facilities that ignored black legacy. Today, you see little left. Some parking garages, empty lots, a few brick buildings, but the Scott Joplin State Historic Site stands nearby, one of the only nods to this once thriving world.
Y'all, they out here saying black family reunions have declined by 47% since 1997. due to our elders passing on, which is Granny and Pawpaw, right? And unresolved family issues. This shit is true. Family just ain't family no more. And I'm gonna say that growing up back in the day, it did feel like a family. You've missed that feeling. It's like a nostalgia feeling. But it was also a lot of dysfunction and chaos. It was a lot of trauma. And what kept us together a lot of the times was just trauma bonding. See, I come from that era where whatever goes on in my house stays in my house. You don't talk about nothing, right? And no matter what a person did to you, yeah, that's still your family. Yeah, that's still your... No. See, I come from an era where my granny used to make them Sunday dinners and everybody would come over like soul food, right? And even though it felt like nostalgia, it is nostalgia. It's a certain smell, it's a certain taste, you miss it. But now that I'm almost 40, I see how much dysfunction and chaos was going on within my family. And I choose to opt out of it, right? It's no village no more, right? It's kind of like every man for themselves. That's what it feels like now, right? Even with raising your kids. A lot of the grandparents ain't like they used to be, right? The grandparents nowadays like, shit, I'm about to have a life too. Even though they used to drop our ass off at our grandparents' house all goddamn day long. Our grandparents raised us, right? But now more so than anything, what I do see is a lot of people actually talking about those family secrets or what traumatized them or childhood trauma and just trying to raise their kids, raise our kids, which is the younger generation now, raise them up in a way in which if it's toxic and it's hurting you, it's okay to let go, even if it is family. Like, y'all have no idea how many people actually was showing up to family reunions and still showing up to family functions and having to see the predator that harmed them or did something to them, or be quiet because, oh, that's your cousin, that's your uncle, that's your auntie, that's your mama, that's your daddy. A lot of that toxic shit just gotta go. It has to stop. And a part of it stopping means that we have to say goodbye to a lot of these family reunions. You know, if you ask me if I miss those family reunions, the answer would be no, not really. Not as an adult. I mean, of course, with your childhood, you look back and you miss a lot of things. You miss a lot of your loved ones that's passed on. You miss that. But as far as the chaos and dysfunction, no, I opt out of that one. I'm not missing out on too much of nothing. I pass.
It is not looking good for Black Americans. We are being displaced. People have been arguing about this for a while now, saying that it's not true, but the statistics are out and the evidence is now undeniable. Over 500 Black neighborhoods have vanished in the past 45 years. America's gentrified neighborhoods have lost 500,000 Black people while gaining residents of every other race. Let's get into it. There were more than 500 Black neighborhoods included in the study, and today, half of these neighborhoods are no longer Black. No racial or ethnic group has experienced more negative impacts from gentrification than Black people. More than 500,000 Black people have been pushed from their homes. Those same neighborhoods have seen more than 3 million new Latino, Asian, and white residents, with cities like Atlanta, Washington, New York, and San Francisco witnessing entire neighborhoods transform within a single generation. The Watts neighborhood in Los Angeles was 2/3 Black at the onset of the 1980s. Today, it's now nearly 80% Latino. Watkins remembers jazz and gospel spilled from the street corners and murals of Black icons washed over bustling sidewalks. Today, the murals of Black heroes have faded from walls and Spanish language signs now match the number of those in English. Sounds of cumbia ring louder than horn-laced jazz notes. Mr. Watkins said, 60 years later, we are in the rearview mirror, and it really feels that way because when you bring up this issue of Black American culture being erased, that we're being displaced from our historically Black neighborhoods, people say that we're making it up. They say they see Black people everywhere. But how are you telling us what we actually experience, what we're seeing happen to our parents, our grandparents? We are seeing the change. This is not a joke. I don't know why people are refusing to talk about this. This does not contribute to white supremacy having this conversation. Like, what kind of nonsense is that?
Before Miami Beach was a vibe, Overtown Miami is where the party was at. Overtown was a mecca for Black icons from all over the country. Until, of course, white racists decided to try to destroy it by smashing highway on top of it. Let's get into it. In the late 1800s, Henry Flagler and other white landowners in Miami brought Black Americans and Black Bahamian workers to build railroads, clear forests, drain swamps, and build the infrastructure that would become the city of Miami. Now, Miami was segregated. This was Jim Crow South. So all of these Black folks were building the city, literally building houses, building the sewer lines, building offices. But they couldn't live where they worked because the city was so segregated. And one of the only places that they could live was an area that was called Colored Town. Colored Town was established in 1896. Within about 20 years, the neighborhood was thriving. Black-owned businesses abounded, and it was attracting a lot of different kinds of Black folks who wanted a place to vacation that was warm and tropical, and they couldn't go to Miami Beach because Miami Beach was a sundown town. Oh yes, South Beach was a sundown town. If you were Black, Latino, Native American, you couldn't be on South Beach after 6 p.m. without a special permit. Oh, no. So where could people stay? They could stay in Overtown, in the hotels that were there. They could eat at the restaurants that were there. They could enjoy entertainment at the lounges and the clubs that were there, the theaters that were there. By the 1920s, black folks had created a city within the city. Yes, a city within Miami. It was completely self-sufficient. It had to be. Black people couldn't be going out into white neighborhoods to do things and do errands, so they created everything they needed there, and it was incredible. Like, you could walk out the street and go to the butcher, go to the baker, go do all of your errands, and then, like, go buy a new outfit, and then go hang out at a club later for dinner. And all of this existed in a small area, a small and mighty area. In its heyday, it reached a peak of about 50,000 residents. Northwest 2nd Avenue became known as Little Broadway because it was full of all kinds of venues like lounges and clubs and theaters. And some of those places were regular stops along the Chitlin Circuit. Places like the Harlem Square Club and the Night Beat Club at the Sir John Hotel. All the famous black entertainers of the time vacationed there, performed there, hung out there. I mean, I'm talking about really famous people like Josephine Baker, Nat King Cole, Lena Horne, who, by the way, like lived there when she was a little girl and then would go back there to vacation there and perform and hang out with her friends. I mean, we're also talking like Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, Ray Charles, B.B. King, Count Basie, Dinah Washington. What a difference a day makes. My God, to have been like a fly on the wall between the 1920s and the 1960s, like the very beginning of 1960s, that's where the party was at. Some of these performers would have gigs on South Beach and in Miami Beach. And of course, like they had to have a special permit and they couldn't stay on the beach, like close to where they're performing. And these performances sometimes ended like late at night. So what would they do? They would go perform for the white folks on the beach. And then they would go back to Overtown where they were staying and they would go out and hang out and meet up with people. And sometimes people would just hand them a mic and they would sing a few songs for free. I mean, imagine you go out to dinner and you're like, oh, there's Josephine Baker at that table over there. Like, what? And of course, like sometimes these artists were also headlining at the venues that were there. Again, like it was part of the Chitlin Circuit. And it wasn't just black entertainers and singers and performers. It was also like black intellectual elites. Like we're talking Zora Neale Hurston. We're talking Martin Luther King Jr. We're talking W.B. Du Bois. We're talking like Langston Hughes. We're talking Thurgood Marshall. Like these folks, these like icons were just there vacationing and hanging out. I cannot imagine what it must have been like to have lived there between the 1920s and the early 1960s. That must have been incredible and beautiful and inspiring, vibrant. Overtown also gave birth to Miami's first black millionaire, Dana Albert Dorsey. And this guy came to Miami as a carpenter. Again, he was like one of the people that built Miami with his fucking bare hands. He was a carpenter. He invested in real estate, became a millionaire, like early 20th century. That was a lot of damn money. And he did not abandon his people. No. He stayed and he invested and reinvested in the community. Sam Cooke put out a recording of himself performing at the Harlem Square Club in 1963, a live recording. And sadly, that was the year when the shit hit the fan. I-95, I-395, and 836 were all built right on top of Overtown between 1963 and 1973. Yes, people protested, people tried to stop it, people tried to fight it. There were alternate routes that could have been used, but no. Because white people saw that black people were in a community that was so strong and thriving that it was attracting all these famous people, all this money, and they couldn't fucking stand it. So they wanted to crush it. And they built these highways. And in a 10-year span, 12,000 residents were forced out. Over 500 businesses were leveled. These are estimates. It's probably a lot higher than that. What would your neighborhood look like if 12,000 people were forced to leave? If 500 or more businesses were leveled, and in place of all of that, you just had a bunch of fucking highways? What would be left of your neighborhood? But the racists didn't stop there. After those highways were built, they continued to attack the residents of Overtown. They declared the neighborhood a slum and used that as an excuse to destroy homes. And they were like, oh, well, we're going to build you new homes. We're going to just destroy this because this is a slum and it's all dilapidated. And so they would wreck people's homes, level them, promise to build them homes and housing, and never actually made good on their promises. So a lot of families were left homeless. You know what the worst part is? The white racist leaders of Miami called one of these attacks. They named one of these attacks the Dorsey Redevelopment Project. Do you remember when I said that D.A. Dorsey was the first black millionaire? Yeah, they co-opted his name, attached it to a project, the name of a project, to excuse them leveling people's homes and continuing to push people out. Here's Overtown before the highways were constructed, and here's an overhead view by 1980 with the highways that were built on top of it. It looks like broken glass. Up on top is 3rd Avenue before in 1929, and down below 2014. Places like the Lord Calvert Hotel were left to ruin, demolished, and now it's a parking lot. And the sad thing is, even sadder, is that Overtown continues to be attacked to this day. As I speak, there are cranes all around the neighborhood, all around those highways. They're being expanded, lanes are being added, on-ramps and off-ramps are being added, decor is being added to the fucking highways. This whole project is costing almost $1 billion for this project, but not one fucking penny for reparations. And the thing that pisses me the most about this, you might be like, why does this guy care so much? Why does this white passing Cuban guy care so much? Because it's our fucking history of the city of Miami. I was born here. I went to school here, and I never learned about what happened in Overtown. Not one fucking bit. Nobody taught us that. And yet it's such a clear example of what America is and what America does. To know the history of Overtown is dangerous because it teaches you that this country was built for white racists by white racists. And if you don't fit that club, you are an enemy and you're being attacked.
I don't care what the beef is between Elon Musk and Trump, but Elon can take his ass back to South Africa. Elon Musk is a white supremacist who is money hungry and power driven. And even with him having this little tussle with Trump, has still found ways to actively harm black folk. This supercomputer build in Memphis, a city that is predominantly black in population, is harmful to the climate and is harmful to people. When these mega millionaires, billionaires set up shop, they always tend to go to predominantly black neighborhoods, which ends up with people succumbing to environmental racism. Folks can kiki all they want about Trump and Musk, but at the end of the day, Elon has no positioning in government, has been to the Pentagon, has been to the Department of Education, while you still owe student loans and can't go to the doctor. And at the beginning and end of the day, no matter how bad it gets with them, they will always choose each other over us. And when I say us, I mean black folks, marginalized folks, working class folks that are not in the 1% conversations. Just some food for thought.
All right, y'all. So a few minutes ago, I saw this post on my page talking about how HOAs were pretty much created to discriminate against black people, which should come as no surprise to anyone. But before we get into that conversation, I actually want us to talk a little bit about public housing and the involvement of race in public housing, redlining, white flight, the gatekeeping of generational wealth from black people via redlining, homeowners associations, so on and so forth. Then we're going to fast forward to the current issue of gentrification and the continued gatekeeping of generational wealth. So during the 1930s, the Great Depression was going on. People were horrible, financially speaking, and people were living in slums. So Congress passed the Housing Act of 1937, which created the Federal Housing Administration, but it also created public housing via giving subsidies from the federal government to local entities so they could build those public housing projects. Now, when housing projects first got built, it was white people living in them too. And to give some local examples, the St. Thomas and the Abbeville was for white people, and then the Magnolia, Lafitte, Callio, and St. Bernard was for black people. Fast forward a few years after that, when they built the Desire and the Florida project, the Florida was for white people and the Desire was for black people. And then about 20 years after that, you get the Fisher and the Melfamine. Now, eventually the federal government desegregated all the housing projects across the country, and that's when you start to see this mass exodus of white people from inner city areas towards the suburbs, and what some people call suburbanization, but most people now call white flight. Now, during the same 1930s, that same federal housing authority created all this public housing for people, they also created a process for underwriting in regards to mortgages and businesses. This process became known as redlining. So here's the redlining map that was drawn of New Orleans, and again, the federal government was creating these maps so that they could tell businesses like mortgage lenders, banks, so on and so forth, which areas and which people they should or shouldn't invest in. So in the gray is the commercial or industrial areas. Blue or green is your first or second choices that you want to invest in. Yellow is less desirable. And then red, I think, is self-explanatory. Now, I'm pretty sure we all guessed which areas and who was living in the areas that got colored red. And if you look closely at this map, you will see that pretty much every neighborhood that black people have lived in historically in New Orleans was colored red, whether that be the 6th ward, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 13th, or 3rd ward. Like, they was all redlined. And redlining is a practice that continued for decades. Now, if you're looking for more visuals and a more in-depth understanding of redlining and the effects of redlining in New Orleans, I highly recommend that you go and watch the story ran by Sharice Gibson on redlining. 10 out of 10. Now, to fast forward from the 30s to the 40s, around 1944-45, the government passes the GI Bill, which is intended to give World War II veterans greater access to education and housing benefits. But of course, America's racist, so these benefits are not shared amongst black people en masse. Out of all the federally insured home loans between the years 1944 and 1959, only about 2% of those loans went to black people. Yes, you heard that correctly. Now, there were some cases of black World War II veterans being able to access the benefits that they were entitled to via the GI Bill. And in these cases, they were buying homes and sometimes even building whole neighborhoods. To give an example, Pontchartrain Park right here in New Orleans is one of the first, if not the first, black suburban middle-class neighborhood built off the back of the GI Bill. Now, at the same time that black veterans can't access these benefits en masse, white people are going and building whole-ass suburbs in which they're trying their damnedest to keep black people out. And in the event that they can't keep black people out, they start creating homeowners associations in which they create so many different rules that come with so many different penalties that at the slightest fuck-up, they would take away a black family's home. Oh, but we're not done with this video yet, no. Now, by this point, the white middle class has been built, and make no mistake about it, it was built by the United States government and government programs. And since we're talking about government programs and who gets them, it should be stated that the biggest beneficiary of government programs has been, and still is, white people. I'm going to say that again. The biggest beneficiaries of government programs, whether that be welfare, food stamps, housing, you name it, was, and still is, white people. So then we fast forward a few more decades after that. Now, by this point, black people have pretty much been damned to living in housing projects in poor and underserved neighborhoods in perpetuity. And then the government comes and puts drugs in our neighborhoods and then starts locking people up for using the drugs, which gives way to mass incarceration. So now we fast forward to the 2000s. Now, the 2000s was uniquely horrific for black New Orleanians in the sense that 2005, Katrina come through, knock all this shit over, and then shortly after that, the city council decided they're going to tear down every single housing project in the city, brick by brick. And then a couple years after that, the housing market collapses along with the Great Recession. So black New Orleanians got hit with a triple whammy. Now, here's what's crazy. The city of New Orleans decides that it's only going to rebuild about 1/5 of the units that it previously had. So there's about 80% of people that were living in public housing that couldn't go back to it. Now, the city's policies in regards to both public housing and short-term rentals, aka Airbnb, which I'll talk about a little bit later in this video, has played a huge role in the decrease of the black population of New Orleans, which has dropped from 67% in the year 2000 to 53% by the year 2020. Now, one of the things that a city could still do to create some type of avenue for affordable housing is to zone their laws for multifamily housing. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Well, Nate, we got buku double shotguns, we got quadplexes, so on and so forth. We got all that in New Orleans. Airbnb took all that over. It's a 3-year span from 2015 to 2018. The number of Airbnbs in New Orleans went from 1,900 to over 6,000. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due. The City Council of New Orleans did just pass a bunch of ordinances to try and correct the issue of Airbnbs taking over whole neighborhoods of New Orleans, so we'll see where that goes. Now, you might be wondering, well, Nate, some of the events that you talked about, that's kind of old. Well, what about now? Let's talk about now. Navy Federal Credit Union just got exposed for denying home loans to over half of their black customers. So, in summary, black people have been systematically left out of any means to create generational wealth.
Did he say this, y'all? Did Trump say he will give police a 1-hour purge to come into our communities and get the job done, to lessen the crime? That don't make sense. If somebody tell me if this man said this, right? Because how are you saying to lessen the crime, but you're sending people in to do a crime, to lessen the crime? Make it make sense. And then they keep pushing this rhetoric that black people produce the most crime in this country, and that is not true. The people who are saying this are the ones who do the most crime in this country. Blue collar, white collar, black collar, okay? So at this point, if he said that, let me say this to you. Because a lot of people won't make it home. If that is what he said, and that's what they think they're going to do, we need to make sure some people don't make it home. Yeah.
Welcome back. Yeah, the thing is, right now, the white people are beginning to, lay ownerships and claims for these properties, buying those places for nothing. And actually, those things that the blacks own are now beginning to, fade away. It's beginning to look like, oh, blacks never had this community before, right? It's even been said that black gatherings, black organizations are being reduced. The last one I saw was 47%. That was in 2022, right? I don't know how many it would be right now. The percentage would have really, really dropped again. What is happening? How are you guys allowing these things happen? A lot of points have been pointed out here. Not taking care of the elderly ones too. How many times have you sat your ancestors down, or your parents, your grandparents down to tell them, please tell me the story. How are these things being done? A lot of you just get married to somebody else, or maybe somebody from another race, and then you forget where you're from. You take your kids out of that family family meetings you enjoyed before. You're going to regret it certainly in the future. I wonder why you will allow this actually happen to you. For me, I don't see the reasons why. We are all we have. We are all we have. The rich should help. The ones who are well-to-do, who have opportunities, should show their brothers. Brothers, I mean black people like you, right? Black Americans. Help them build a stronger community. Start taking over businesses. In America, that's what I want to see. I want to see you guys taking over businesses, big farms, big organizations. That is what I want to see. Really, I am not happy with this whole, gentrification this and all of that. Because clearly, we all allowed this to happen. If we'd never give it a chance, this wouldn't have really, really happened. So what are you going to do about this? What do you think you do? Now, a lot of people call it progress, but at what cost would you fight to keep your community? Or start over somewhere new? Do you want to go and start over somewhere new? I saw the pictures of those places that don't exist anymore, and I'm like, what? They look so peaceful. They're so, come on. I want to hear your views in the comments. I would like to see, let's talk in the comments, right? Do not forget to subscribe, like, share these videos to your friends, your neighbors, and, let's keep the Global Gist with Beejay going. Thank you so much, and I appreciate it. God bless you.